Well, today is chapter 11 of 2 Corinthians. In this chapter, Paul is going to kind of take his what we talked about in the last chapter, to the next level of saying, guys, here's what you shouldn't do. Here's what you need to be doing. That's what we're going to be focusing more on through this chapter. So verse 1, would to God ye could bear with me a little in my folly, and indeed bear with me. For I am jealous over you with godly jealousy, for I have espoused you to one husband, that I may present you as a chaste virgin to Christ. Now, this is really interesting, bringing up this idea of engagement, marriage. This is covenant language that he's using here to kind of, in verse 1, he's kind of like, humor me for a second here, basically. Let's kind of talk a little bit metaphorically, kind of humor me in this. And then verse 2, I'm jealous because I have given you over to Christ. So it's as if I've espoused you to one husband, that I may present you as a chaste virgin to Christ. So this is the idea of I'm helping the bride come to the bridegroom. If you're familiar with Isaiah, and if you're not, go through our Isaiah chapters and you'll see this. Isaiah and who's it? Haggai? No, Hosea had that as well. Jeremiah talks about this idea, this concept of the church, the members of the church are the bride coming to Christ, making a covenant with him. The marriage covenant, or a sealing covenant, is what he's getting at here, basically. That same verbiage and language. Verse 3, but I fear, lest by any means, as the serpent beguiled Eve through his subtlety, so your mind should be corrupted from the simplicity that is in Christ. So Paul's warning the people about following false teachers who want to draw people away from Christ. Now, what's interesting here is when he talks about the simplicity, the best Greek manuscripts also have "and purity" in here as well. Christ's gospel is simple and pure. Basically, the world wants to overcomplicate it and make it grand and amazing, and only certain people can understand it. And so there's exclusivity, that's pride and other things mixed in. And he's like, no, Christ wants it to be available to all. It is simple. It isn't that complicated. You just need to be willing to follow it inside, not just act religious, but truly be religious. That's what he's talking about. In fact, verse 4, he says, for if he that cometh preacheth another Jesus, whom we have not preached, or if ye receive another spirit which ye have not received, or another gospel which ye have not accepted, ye might well bear with him. So as he's talking about here, this is a preaching another Jesus is a counterfeit gospel. It sounds similar, but is slightly different. And it's going to draw you away from the true gospel, making logical jumps to false conclusions. That's a false Jesus. Okay, that's what he's talking about here. It's going to sound like the gospel of Jesus Christ, but it's going to have a few small tweaks that are going to just slowly bend it a little, and then eventually you're going to be way off the course down the road. That's what he's talking about. So be careful. If it's not what we preach, like he's like, look, we've established we are the apostles. We're the ones who've seen Jesus as a resurrected being. We understand his gospel. You need to follow us. If it's contrary to what we're saying, then you need to be suspect of it by default. That's what he's saying here in verse 4. Now, if you're familiar with LDS General Conference, this is a common theme that LDS General Conference uses as well. If it's not what we're saying, be suspect of it first, basically, to go through it. It doesn't mean everything you hear. Some people take this the idea that everything you hear that's not from the apostles is wrong. And that's not true either. Okay, that is wrong by itself. Truth is still truth, and anybody can say the truth. But we need to make sure that it's coming back to what is our source of truth, and can it match up with what we understand? Okay, that's what it is. So it's not about rejecting everything. It's about evaluating everything based on what we currently know is true. And as long as we know what we have is completely true, then that'll help out. So really the quest to understand religion is to truly understand, do I know the truth or not? And how can I truly know that? And the only way to truly know it is to talk to Christ and God. Basically pray. Build a relationship personally with God, and he will guide you with the Spirit to the truth. And then you work with the Spirit and it'll help you to find the truth and go that way. That's really what it comes down to. So less about the religion, more about that connection with God is the important part, basically. And it'll help you to find the religion that is teaching the proper stuff, basically. Verse 5, he says, "For I suppose I was not a whit behind the very chiefest apostles." So again, this is establishing that idea of authority, of how do we know where to get our sources from. Okay, now the chiefest apostles, these may have been the Jewish Christian missionaries that claim to have special authority from Jerusalem, is what he's talking about here. So there's this contradiction that's happening. Okay, we have the apostles, then we have other missionaries who've been told to go out and teach the gospel, and they're trying to promote themselves to be like the apostles, or even sometimes better than the apostles, as if they have the word and nobody else does. And the apostles are going, no, it's Christ's word. I'm just teaching what Christ has taught me. And that's, there's that different perspective, and that's what he's trying to help people to delineate out. Verse 6, "But though I be rude in speech," or unskilled is another way to think about that, "yet not in knowledge," or the gnosis, the special wisdom and understanding. "But we have been thoroughly made manifest among you in all things. Have I committed an offense in abasing myself that ye might be exalted? Because I have preached to you the gospel of God freely." So he's talking about here in verse 7. In fact, Wayment in his book, The New Testament, says the implication is that some have complained that by not asking for financial assistance, Paul was not a legitimate missionary. Paul criticizes this view and offers his willingness to work as a sign of his genuineness. So he's not relying on the people to take care of him. He's still working. He's still doing things himself. And it's so crazy to think about this, that they're like, well, can you be a true missionary if you're not living off of our help? And that's because the other missionaries are saying that we need to live off you. Please donate to us so we can survive. And Paul's like, I've been running my business and teaching you at the same time. Why don't you understand that I'm truly trying to be sincere with you? Verse 8, "I robbed other churches, taking wages of them to do you service." What he means by that is, in the Greek, it means I despoiled other churches, having taken provisions for you. So in a way, he's not saying I'm like going to steal from other churches, but what he's saying is, as you leave the other churches, you're bringing your resources with you to this church, and you can help bless the lives of other people. He's, by teaching the gospel to you, the other churches are losing membership, basically. Verse 9, "And when I was present with you and wanted, I was chargeable to no man. For that which was lacking to me, the brethren which came from Macedonia supplied. And in all things I have kept myself from being burdensome unto you, so will I keep myself." So Paul had support from other members, so he wasn't a burden on the local saints. He's trying to help them out. Like, guys, I'm not trying to live off of you. I'm trying to do my business, and I'm getting support from other people, so I'm not a burden to you, so that you can know that I'm truly teaching you the message. I'm not trying to teach you what you want to hear. I'm trying to teach you the message separate from my needs. Because sometimes if my money is based upon what I teach, then I need to teach what brings me money. Do you see how that can be a contradiction? If I'm taking care of my financial needs outside of what I'm teaching you, then what I teach you doesn't need to rely on teaching what you want to hear or what you would like, but teaching you the truth. That's what he's trying to say. So verse 10, "As the truth of Christ is in me, no man shall stop me of this boasting in the regions of Achaia. Wherefore, because I love you not, God knoweth. But what I do, that I will do, that I may cut off occasion from them which desire occasion, that wherein they glory, they may be found even as we." So again, he's kind of comparing himself in verse 12 with this idea of, I'm not trying to do what these false people are doing. I'm not following their plan to do this. So stop thinking that their plan is the right plan and I'm the wrong one. You need to switch that. I'm the right plan, they're the wrong ones. Verse 13, for such are false apostles, deceitful workers, transforming themselves into the apostles of Christ. So again, this is the problem. Now, Paul taught to the Corinthian saints originally and helped them. But since then, people have risen up to be appearing to be as if they are like Paul. They're like an apostle. They're leading the church the way they think it should be led and not leading the church the way Christ should lead them, which is defying current authority in place, basically. And so that's the problem, is they're leading people astray because they believe they're just as important as the apostles, and they're following their pride, which Satan is going to use against them to convince the saints to follow a false Jesus, a fake religion. So this is a good warning for us. Are we following a false Jesus? Are we following a fake religion? It's easy for us to say somebody else might be following a false religion. But are we willing to be honest enough with ourselves to ask ourselves, are we following a false religion? Do we really know and understand what we believe and where it comes from? And can we pray to God and ask him, are we so willing to say, God, I'm willing to pray over my religion, that even if you tell me my religion is wrong, I will believe you and I will leave my current religion and find another one? Are you that confident? Are you that open to be willing to be connected with God to do that? You kind of have to be to really understand the truth. So that's the important thing for us to be looking at. What can we do to really come to God and use him as the source of truth? Not someone's opinion or someone's interpretation or translation, but God directly. That's where we connect personally inside with God and have his Spirit with us to guide us. So that's what's happening here. There's people that are pretending to be apostles, pretending to be these missionaries, pretending to be these great people, and they're leading the people astray. Now, verse 14, he's going to bring in a comparison here. He says, and no marvel, for Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light. Now, this means disguised. Satan will use what seems to be light to trick you. Mortal light and spiritual light might look the same, but come from different sources. So Satan wants you to believe that he can turn himself into an angel of light and make it seem like he is an angel you would expect from heaven. He's following what you think an angel would look like, not what a real angel looks like. The real angel is not going to conform to what you think they should look like. They're going to be different. But Satan's going to use your perception to make you believe what you thought was true is true and confuse you. So this is the challenge. This is the dynamic that we have. How do we know what really is true? If Satan can deceive, how do we know what really is true? This is where directly connecting with God, doing things to have the Spirit with you, truly have the Holy Spirit with you, deep inside, have that sincerity to ask God, I need help to understand, am I following the truth or not? And if I'm not, where do I go to find it? You have to be open to doubt in order to get to that place of willingness to learn the truth. And that's what he's getting at here is, guys, you need to stop just blatantly following these people because they're teaching you what you want to hear. You need to objectively compare them. And to do that, you need to have a neutral position that can be trusted to give you a guidepost to help you in this journey. And that is God. Focus on God. Let him be the main source. And then you can evaluate where you're at now and then what I believe right now is legit or not. You have to be willing to come to God and let God guide you and not the opinions of other people. So you may believe the church you're a member of is a great church, it's a wonderful church, it's the true church. But until you can say, God has shown me, God has helped me to confirm, independent of all the other people, that this is true or not, you're still going to have perception problems. Your testimony of your religion should be based on your understanding of you and God, not a book, not an external evidence. That's the important thing, and that's what he's trying to get these guys to look at. In fact, verse 15, verse 15, excuse me. He says, therefore it is no great thing if his ministers also be transformed as the ministers of righteousness, whose end shall be according to their works. So he's talking about ministers here. These are talking about these false preachers. They look religious. They look like they have the pomp and circumstance and everything else, but their works will prove them wrong. And you will see this over time. They're going to have problems and issues. And that's what you need to look at and go, okay, I need to focus on my relationship with God is the most important thing here. Verse 16, I say again, let no man think me a fool, if otherwise, yet as a fool receive me, that I may boast myself a little. That which I speak it not after the Lord, but as it were foolishly, in this confidence of boasting. Seeing that many glory after the flesh, I will glory also. For ye suffer fools gladly, seeing ye yourselves are wise. For ye suffer if a man bring you into bondage. If a man devour you, if a man take of you, if a man exalt himself, if a man smite you on the face. I speak as concerning reproach, as though we had been weak. Howbeit whereinsoever any is bold, I speak foolishly, I am bold also. So he's trying to do this comparison idea of, I'm trying to be bold. I'm not necessarily boasting in myself, but I'm very confident in my testimony where I'm coming from, basically. And I have a sure understanding, and that's why you need to be following me. Verse 22, are they Hebrews? So am I. Are they Israelites? So am I. Are they the seed of Abraham? So am I. So again, he's trying to say, let's get all the worldly ideas out of here. Okay? Let's break this down to what can we bring in as the differentiator. Okay? Verse 23, are they ministers of Christ? I speak as a fool. I am more. In labors more abundant, in stripes above measure, in prisons more frequent, in deaths oft. So he says here basically, I am a real minister of Christ. I have preached Christ even in hard times. I've been put in jail. I have been beaten. I have been challenged. I've been physically threatened, and I'm still teaching Christ despite all that. Though guys who are fake won't, because they'll see their life is more important than the message, and they will give up the message to deal with their life. Now, that doesn't mean that that's a way to delineate, oh, let's just beat up the preachers and see who gives in and who doesn't. That's not really a good way to do it, because that contradicts the other things Christ taught about being kind and nice to people. Verse 24, of the Jews 5 times received I 40 stripes, save one. So let's look at some of these ideas here, because he's going to get into more of this, basically, that he's using the sufferings as a claim. Now, Paul listed many of the sufferings he passed through as he ministered as a loyal disciple of Jesus Christ. Paul's ministry covered 3 decades, during which time he traveled well over 10,000 miles, much of it on foot. As a disciple of Jesus Christ, Paul willingly endured a remarkable number of hardships, many of which are recorded in the book of Acts. The 5 beatings of 40 stripes, save one, that Paul received from Jewish authorities were the severest form of whipping Paul could have received under Jewish law. Despite the repeated beatings, Paul continued to visit synagogues to proclaim the gospel to his fellow Jews, as well as to Gentiles. The combination of these trials is staggering to contemplate. Without apostolic authority and a deep commitment to Jesus Christ, it is unlikely that Paul could have endured such extreme difficulties, in contrast to those whom Paul labeled as false apostles. Paul had proper authority, and his ministry was evidence of his sincere, devoted discipleship. So he wasn't just a disciple when it was easy and popular and famous. He was a disciple when it meant he could lose his life. He was true to the end. That's this idea of a true disciple type concept. Now he's going to go into some more things here that he's suffered, like in verse 25, thrice I was beaten with rods, once I was stoned, thrice I suffered shipwreck. A night and a day I have been in the deep. So he's been stuck for 24 hours in the ocean. Verse 26, in journeyings often, in perils of waters, in perils of robbers, in perils of mine own countrymen, in perils by the heathen, in perils in the city, in perils in the wilderness, in perils in the sea, in perils among false brethren. So he is like, he's gone through a lot, basically. Verse 27, in weariness and painfulness, in watchings often, in hunger and thirst, in fastings often, in cold and nakedness, besides those things that are without, that which cometh upon me daily, the care of all the churches. Who is weak, and I am not weak? Who is offended, and I burn not? If I must needs glory, I will glory the things which concern mine infirmities. The God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, which is blessed for evermore, knoweth that I lie not. So he's like, guys, I have suffered tremendous stuff. I've had many opportunities to give this up, and I didn't. I have kept going because this is the truth. This matters more than my suffering in my life. He's using this idea of, I'm sincere, and you can look at my life, I'm sincere. These other guys, they're going to give up as soon as their money's not there. They're going to give up as soon as it gets hard, because it's not about the message. It's about the money and the pride and the aggrandizement by teaching the message that they get. Their motivation isn't to teach you the truth. Their motivation is to teach you things that keep you paying them money. Whereas I teach the truth despite the setbacks and problems. I'm sincere in this. And God knows I'm sincere. And that's the thing that matters. So if God knows I'm sincere and you can connect with God, then you'll know I'm sincere as well. That's the key. In verse 32, he says, in Damascus, the governor under Aretas, the king, kept the city of the Damascenes with a garrison, desires to apprehend me, and through a window in a basket I was let down by the wall and escaped his hands. Now, this is an interesting specific story that Paul is giving us here. So let's read this. This is coming from Wikipedia. The Nabatean king who died in 40 CE, King Aretas IV Philopatris. His daughter Phasaelus was married to and divorced from Herod Antipas. After he received news of the divorce, Aretas invaded the territory of Herod Antipas and defeated his army. So this Nabatean king's daughter was married to Herod Antipas, who is the son of Herod the Great. If you remember, he was over the area. Herod Antipas divorced this guy's daughter. So he's like, you're going to treat my daughter that way? No, you're not. I'm going to bring my armies and we're going to wipe you out. And they beat Antipas's armies. The capital of his kingdom was a prosperous trading city, Petra, some 170 miles south of Amman. Now, if you've heard of Petra, that's that crescent-shaped, where that crescent-shaped area is in the country of Jordan, where they filmed they have the temple built into the canyon wall, where they filmed Indiana Jones and the quest for the Holy Grail, basically. That's Petra. That whole area, there's a whole bunch down at the other end of that canyon. There's a whole bunch more buildings and dwellings built into the canyon walls over there. He says, being the most powerful neighbor of Judea, he frequently took part in the state of affairs of that country and was influential in shaping the destiny of its rulers. While not on particular good terms with Rome, and though it was only after great hesitation that Augustus recognized him as king, he nevertheless took part in the expedition of Varus against the Jews in the year 4 BC, and placed considerable army at the disposal of the Roman general. So they came together to fight against the Jews, basically, around that time. So Paul, in this experience, basically, the king is looking for Paul. He has a garrison of troops looking for him. So Paul had to escape by going out a window, being let down by a basket to get out of the city so he wouldn't be apprehended, basically. So hopefully that gives you a little bit more information on that story specifically that Paul is giving us there. Well, let's jump to the next chapter as we continue forward.